So the school committee is just returning from executive session, and I'm going just to read the preliminary matter. I'm Nancy Kavanaugh, Vice Chair of the school committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So I'll start with Amanda.
Yes, here.
Jen?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
And then we have from our staff, we have Susan Rothermick.
Yes.
And Dr. Carol Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Okay, and so good evening. This open meeting of the school committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical locations. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the school committee is convening by Zoom and broadcast by HCAM as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may watch. Additionally, the meeting may also be rebroadcast through HCAM. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screenshot your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. Meeting supporting materials and packets. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the next item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. During public comment, comments will be read that have come through to the superintendent through her email, and comments that are arrived through the text number, which is 508-847-6732 in time for the public comments will be read at that time. There will be a public comment period at both the beginning and the end of this meeting. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So that brings us, we did conduct our public forum earlier at 6 o'clock, but that brings us now for our first opportunity for public comment. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have any recognitions first, I guess, and then any public comment after that?
No, even though I am going to mention it in my superintendent's report, I would like to recognize the high school administration and the class of 2020 on their amazing first ever rolling parade. I mean, it was just so much work, I'm sure. And I want to, acknowledge the hard work for the kids and for the administration.
It was an amazing day. Amanda?
I just want to add my recognition for the community because they came out everybody came out to support the kids. It was really phenomenal. I mean, the streets were lined, teachers came back from Elmwood and Marathon or Center School. And it was just phenomenal. So my hat goes off to the community that came out.
I would say it was just the medicine the community needed to feel a little better after a long, dark period of isolation. Does anyone have any public comments that have been received for the committee? I do not have any.
I do not. I just scrolled through my email one more time and I do not have any.
Okay, then that moves us into reports. The first report we have is the financial report, and that's an update on the savings and losses for FY20.
Okay, I will take that from here. Thank you, Nancy, and I will share my screen again. Actually, hold for 1 minute till I get to the right place. There we go. Okay. So again, can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Okay. So this is to give an update of where we are with the FY20 budget as it stands right now. So again, as we reviewed a couple meetings ago, in terms of landing the FY20 budget, the focus has been on revenue loss in our revolving accounts. Not only, we use them for FY20, but we also use them looking forward. So again, there's a long-term focus landing FY20, but also keeping an eye to 21 and 22. Also looking at our use of grants and covering one-time purchases for FY21. So as of the end of May, you see that we have a negative variance for payroll, but a positive variance for expense. So at this time, we have a positive variance of 157,000. This number is still fluid. We are still making purchases and things are still moving around. As a for instance, after I did this financial report, we did incur some motors that needed to be replaced in some of the buildings. So business does continue to happen as usual. But again, so at this time, we're at 157,000 positive variance. So what does that look like? From the payroll side, we have a positive attrition, personnel attrition. We had column changes that were less than budgeted, and the budget each year is based on history. So this was a year that worked in our favor, and last year, this number actually did not work in our favor. So we had column changes that were higher than budgeted. So this one did work in our favor this year. Salary reserve, and as you know, throughout the year, there were positions that were added after the budget process. So those are the positions that were added and some small positions that were reduced. And then the last are all other variances. And what we're starting to see basically is overtime and unpaid time is what makes up those small amounts. Continuing on with the payroll accounts, this is where you start to see what happened in terms of the building shutdowns. So we did not spend 41,000 in our substitute accounts, again, due to school closures. Special education, again, moved monies, expenditures over to grants. So there was a savings there. Preschool, this is where we start to look at that revenue loss. So we did not collect tuition for the time that we were shut down for FY20, but also looking forward to FY21, what is preschool going to look like, and will we be collecting tuition for preschool? So the decision was made to pull more money back into the operating so that the preschool revolving account would be intact both for 21 and for 22. So that's where you see covering the revenue loss in 20, but also, again, long-term planning for that. High school teaching, this is where we have an offset for the international tuition revenue. And again, this is an account that is unknown. We don't know if students will travel and come to Hopkins High School. So this is another account where we look to really preserve the balance in that international tuition revolving. again, both for 21 and hopefully for 22. So we pulled that costs that we normally would charge to that revolving back into the operating. Crossing guards, we offset some of the crossing guard salaries with parking fees. And again, we don't know what parking fee revenue will be. If we have shutdowns, will we be reimbursing parking fees? Will that be going back to students? So that is also an unknown. So again, this is preserving that parking fee revolving for both the long-term 21 and 22. Athletics, as we know, we did not have a spring season. So this is the amount of money that was saved in negotiating what was paid for stipends. But the spring stipends are typically paid out of the athletic revolving anyway. So you see this both as a savings, both an in and an out. But in addition, we do, again, not knowing what we're looking at for athletic fees in the future and what will happen, $88,000 would have normally been charged. That's some of the winter stipend that would have been charged to the revolving. And the decision, again, was to use some of the savings and preserve that revolvings, again, so that it would be available in the long term. And then you see transfer from expense accounts, that was something that was done a while ago. So the net payroll variance, again, is a negative $236,000. On the expense side, this is savings, transportation. We had a contract renegotiation for the shutdown, so that produced a savings of $208,000. Athletics did not incur multiple things, again, because there was no spring season. Utilities, building shutdowns, and also marathon, I believe, we're still kind of going up and down with what the budget for marathon should be, because now we're in our second year, but really no clear history. Year one of marathon, we were still in the commissioning stage, and now year two of marathon, we were shut down. So it's very difficult to know what marathon utilities should be. We have not had a smooth year to be able to estimate that out. Out of district tuitions and Norfolk Aggie tuitions, we had some positive variance. Again, really just change in student needs. School committee legal is running as a negative variance. And then all schools put together, again, a positive variance of unspent supplies, just everything that relates to having the buildings shut down. That was a savings. Building and grounds, and again, other than contracted services, which you'll see later, had a small negative variance at this time. Superintendent office, central office, positive variance. Again, tuition reimbursements came in under budget, and that is something, again, that is estimated based on history. Professional development, there was professional development that did not happen, so that was a savings. And just a bunch of miscellaneous other small accounts to account for additional savings. So curriculum, this is where we were using those one-time purchases in FY21 in order to reduce the FY21 budget. We pulled those into FY20, so that you'll see as a negative variance. And in saving the use of our circuit breaker revolving, so it will be available for 21 and 22, we pulled back those expenses that would have been charged to circuit breaker back into the operating. Again, knowing that we had savings, this was a way of preserving those revolvings going forward. Building and grounds contracted service, again, this is the same. We did not have building rental at all this year. So this is preserving that account so that it is available. And food service, as we all know, that we did not have any sales, obviously, from the time of shutdown. And this really preserves and puts into that revolving account the amount of money of prepaid accounts. So in other words, as a family, they may have $10 sitting on their child's account available for next year. So this is the full report of any family that has money sitting on their account. This makes them whole within that account. So that's it in brief in terms of where we are at this time. And if there are any questions.
I do have a question. Amanda, you're welcome to go first if you have your, okay. So could you explain, Susan, maybe just a little bit about the circuit breaker accounts? Because I know we find out about those annually, but I didn't know we could hang on to them.
So you have 2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you receive, typically what you want to do is the money we receive this year, you don't want to be budgeting for money that you're receiving at the same time.
Okay.
So you want to be out a year, but you also have 2 years to spend it. So this keeps us safe. And if you remember back to the FY21 presentation, we've increased that use for FY21 of circuit breaker. So pulling the money back in, using the savings in 20 gives us more ability to use more money in 21 of circuit breaker as for instance.
Okay. And that kind of helps us out looking forward maybe for the next 2 years when
It does.
Getting back into the swing of things.
Well, and as we look long term, there are students that will age out. So that will change, as long as you don't have a huge break of a move-in, that will change our tuitions, looking at our population now dramatically in the future because we do have students that are aging out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have 2 questions. It looks like we're going to then have like around 157,000 that we will return to the town to free cash. Is that depending on how the month plays out? Right now,
correct. Yep.
Where that's kind of where we're trending.
Yep.
Did we get clarity on whether or not we can access that money for fiscal year 21?
So the way the guidance is right now, free cash for FY21 is based on what was certified in October of 19. So this free cash as of June 30th, 20 won't get certified until after town meeting. So this free cash is not necessarily available for September, and that is not what is being included as part of the September funding sources. However, with everything that is going on, there is legislature that may make it available to use it, but it probably would not be until after town meeting, and probably would be a special town meeting if we were in need of tapping into that.
Okay. That makes sense. And my other question was, knowing that this is still unfolding because we are still in 20, so we're still living 20, we're still getting bills and paying bills, and how do these numbers play into the budget that we put together
For FY21?
Correct. I mean, because we're holding on to our revolving accounts, which is smart.
Yes.
I mean, obviously we took a hit on a lot of those this year. So is this accounting and the ability to use some of those savings, is this reflected in our budget?
Yes. So the ability, had we not pulled those expenses into 20, we would not have those funds available for 21.
Right.
So this fully accounts for making these funding, the revolving accounts available for 21, but also 22. So this gives us that ability to do that. Had we not, we would be in even a worse place for 21. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So
like the international, we're not even granting visas right now. So I mean, looking at international students, we have no idea what will play out by September. Things like that is so uncertain.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
So all these uncertainties, preschool, what will that look like? International students, will they travel? We don't know. Parking, if we shut down, we'll be reimbursing students. You know, we're thinking of all that and making sure that our revolving accounts are in a condition that we can weather that storm.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Jen, did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to, I'm glad Amanda asked that question too, because I think what you have done, and I think it's fantastic, is basically planned for 2 years, 2 hard years in using whatever we can piece together from this budget. So I think it's fantastic. I think, you know, you guys should be applauded for the work you put into doing that and trying to keep us as safe as possible for at least 2 more years while we, you know, dig ourselves out of this. So thank you.
Well, you know, I mean, the worst thing we can do is, you know, and you know, we keep talking about one-time funding. So if you overuse a revolving account, if you overuse any one-time funding, then you have that cliff. So we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to spread this out so that we can weather, you know, a couple years in a row, you know, without using one-time funding that it becomes a cliff for the next year.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Meg, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, I'm so impressed that you've had to do this twice in the past 8 months, plan for the next few years, and you've achieved it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Agree. And thank you also for this clarification for all of us on kind of what's been different with regards to shutting the schools down.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to make it very clear to the community, while yes, absolutely there were savings, you know, but we needed to use those savings so that we did not get hit hard with the next year, budget. So it's really kind of, like I said, landing the budget without having a long-term effect. So, you know, yes, there were savings, absolutely, but we used those to cover losses.
Thank you. Oh, Carol, you're muted.
I do want to say thank you to Mrs. Rothermick, who has been working really around the clock on budget. You know, as you know, we had worked very hard as an administrative team to put together an entire FY21 budget. After the shutdown, we worked really hard to revise the entire FY20 budget, and then we had to revise the FY21 budget. So there's almost been, you know, we say there are 2 budgets, but in some ways there have been 3. So it's been an awful lot of work. And so, Susan, thank you for all of that.
Thanks.
In the midst of a lot of other things having to be juggled around and reworked at the same time. So thank you.
Thank you.
So if there are no other comments or questions on that, I'll move us into the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. Let me just get my. All right, I'm not sure if you are able to see that or not. Yes?
It's,
Yes.
it's good enough, but it's not in presentation mode. Do you want it in presentation mode?
I think I'm okay like this. I think it'll just go right along. Yeah, that's good. I should probably get rid of you guys too. There we go. All right, this is actually a very quick superintendent's report tonight. My very first thing to say is, again, congratulations to the class of 2020. I mean, it was a very tough spring for those kids, and I think they went out with some grace and dignity. We will certainly be having an in-person graduation on August 2nd. And here are just a couple of photos from the day. It was really interesting. I think when the parade started, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, what a really nice thing for the kids. And then, you know, in looking at the cars and seeing how many moms and dads and siblings and kids who had graduated who had come back to be with their younger siblings, I started to think, this is an amazing day for families. And, you know, at a traditional graduation, all of the kids are in the bleachers and the families sit opposite them in the other bleachers. And I think this was just a really nice way to bring families together. And then finally on my ride home, traveling a little bit of the parade route, there were still hundreds of people all over the community out, you know, barbecuing and lawn chairs and banners and balloons. And then I took it to the next level and thought it was a really great day, not just for kids and families, but for the entire community. And I think that's what graduation from a high school should be. So a really fortuitous outcome to something that really hadn't boded all that well earlier in the spring. I do have an update on enrollment. What you see on the screen right now is we have actually done our flip, and you can see now that we have taken, for example, the kindergarten numbers and moved them to grade 1 and grade 1 to grade 2. So what we'll start to do is to look at how many kids are approved for entry into that grade going into the fall, and how many kids right now are pending approval, which means, parents have put information into Power School, and we're just sort of checking, medical records, residency, all of that, and eventually the pending approvals will move to the approved side. So the big numbers down at the bottom probably aren't all that relevant at this point, but the numbers in the middle of that grid are. So for example, if you look at grade 1, there is a net loss in grade 1 going from K to 1 of 7 students. But I think what we are kind of seeing is that, sorry, am I right about that? No, sorry, a net loss of 2 kids in grade 1. I'm sorry. But if you take a look at something like grade 2, we have what will be a net gain of 7. And so you're already starting to see that pattern of gains in all of those classes. So for example, grade 2 that used to be at 298 is already at 305. So people are wondering, will families be moving into Hopkinton given the state of the economy? And from the very little that you can see right now in this graph, the answer would be yes to those questions. If there are people who are wondering about grade 9, typically we always have a big exit in grade 9. So we have 2 kids who are approved and 5 pending approval. So it looks like we have 7 coming in. The 14 who are going out are probably our students who are going to Keefe Tech, who have chosen a charter school, or who are going to Norfolk Aggie. So there's just kind of, they'll still sort of in some ways, be ours. But that doesn't mean that we won't have kids who go to private schools as well. Just an update on reentry planning. And I know that I had said this in the public forum when I was asked, but I will repeat it because I think it bears repeating. The Commissioner of Education, Jeffrey Riley, has indicated, and this is a surprise really to most districts, that he's going to issue a statewide directive for all schools. And so he says he has a continuum. On one side is remote instruction. On the other side is everybody comes back full time. He plans to land somewhere in the middle. What he's talking about right now is a kind of hybrid model. What that is, we won't know until June 15th, but it may mean that some kids are in some days and out other days, or some kids are in, all kids are in, but only for half days. So we'll have to see what that will look like after we get that direction from the commissioner. The CDC has issued a set of guidelines for reopening, and so we kind of keep up with those, but I'm sure that over the summer months, those things will continue to be changing depending upon the trajectory of the virus. So if we see, a quieting of the virus, things may change. If we see another outbreak, things might change. But as we go through that, we will certainly make sure that we are in compliance with those guidelines. So what does that mean for our schools? It means that our schools will have the appropriate bathroom cleaning and sanitizing. It means that we'll have the appropriate hand sanitizer. It means that kids won't be in unless we have the right PPE for students, for teachers, and for our nurses. So all of that stuff will certainly be in place before we reopen our doors. There is some, sort of very good news on that front. We have been, invited into, the state buying power. So that may reduce some of the cost for that. And as you know, the entire town of Hopkinton has CARES Act money and some FEMA monies that we can reach into in the event that we need to add nursing staff or custodial staff, or we need additional PPE. I think that we have, and Mrs. Rothermick can help me with this, but I think that we have already submitted for some reimbursement along those lines, and there's another date coming up on July 1st where we can submit for additional reimbursement. I included that picture of the University of Miami image because we do in fact have masks and face shields for all students. Now, I'm sure that we're going to have kids who really want to jazz those things up, but I mean, really, that's what some of our kids will look like if they have to be in high density or, one-to-one up close kind of settings. And we've looked at those places with an audit in our building. So what does it look like in guidance offices, for example, where we may have to install plexiglass shields between a counselor and a student? Or what does it look like when kids can't be separated by 6 feet for instructional purposes? So we are working really hard on that. If you look at number 4, we still have an awful lot of planning and work to do with input from the community. So I don't want people to think that we're making decisions without them. We are making the decisions that we are able to make about PPE. And we're doing that because we want to be ahead of the ordering and we want to make sure that we're getting the best pricing that we can. So that's all I have for right now on reentry planning, but there is certainly more to come on that. As you know, I had sent out something to the entire school district, just sort of having a little conversation, dialogue with parents and families and students about what's going on in our world. And while we were doing our walkthroughs, I kind of came upon this notion that we really do have a lot of that kind of subtle messaging that happens in our schools. And so it kind of compelled me to put that into tonight's presentation. And I had probably, I don't know, 25 pictures just from, kind of wandering around today through the schools, but, things on diversity, LGBTQ, things about having the courage to, be an upstander as opposed to a bystander. Hate has no home here, written in multiple languages. We have things that are rugs in our schools that sort of show kids who are, of multiple races and ethnicities kind of coming together, all kinds of messaging everywhere. And I just feel like I don't think we can be loud enough about those messages. And I think that that is all I have for you.
Any questions or comments? Thank you for that.
Thanks very much.
So that moves us into the school committee chair report, and I have approved warrant 20-060, and the warrant has been included in your packet. I also, as legally required, just want to publicly announce that while we were in executive session, we approved the minutes of January 20th, 2020, April 30th, 2020, and May 14th, 2020. We also voted not to release those minutes because the purposes for which the executive session was necessitated still exists. So with that, are there any liaison reports that people have? So, and we did not have any office hours, so I don't have an update on that, but that brings us to new business, the FY21 budget, and that is you, Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right, thank you. So as I think folks know, if they had attended or watched the public forum that was held at 6 o'clock, or if people have been in tune to our last few school committee meetings, that the FY21 budget has in fact changed. We've gone from a school budget that had been agreed upon at an 8.2% increase to a 6.6% increase. Now, and these are really challenging times. I think that going from 8.2 to 6.6 has been something that, has not been easy, but we've been exceedingly resourceful, I think, in looking at, one-time expenditures, increasing revolving accounts just to sort of be very safe, renegotiating busing contracts, trying to preserve the classroom. And all of those pieces have been put together to what we feel is, at this point, a very comprehensive budget. And so at this point in time, I am requesting that the school committee consider voting on the FY21 revised budget and an increase of 6.6%.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments that people want to raise now before we move forward? Okay. In the absence of any current question, oh, I'm sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
Sorry.
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I fixed that. I'm not good with the button. I commend the work that's going on the budget. I think my two hesitations about voting the budget tonight are still around the fact that even though there is some CARES money for the community and some other sources of funding, there is still so much that we don't know about the fall that we haven't built into the budget. The budget revision was built not with any specific accommodations for pandemic learning. It was built based on traditional learning and where we could squeeze, which totally makes sense because that's all we knew. But I'm really concerned that we take a vote tonight and then on June 15th, we learn from the commissioner some set of directions that would require additional investment, either in buses or nurses or substitutes, or I mean, there's like a whole bunch of stuff that could come up. There are also savings that we could potentially realize depending on what happens with athletics or other extracurriculars. But for me personally, I would like to hold off on the vote until after we hear from the commissioner on June 15th. The second concern I have, which we as a committee haven't actually discussed yet, is the $900,000 from the host community agreement money. And I think my concern there is that we are required by the charter, whatever it was that created that stabilization fund, to spend that money on increases that are related to Legacy Farms enrollment. And I don't believe that we as a committee have actually worked with Mrs. Rothermick to look at which of our budget increases are connected to Legacy Farms. I mean, I did a back of the envelope. I'm more like around 600,000, but that's just me, one person. You know, we just haven't done that. And our charter is specifically to spend that money for Legacy Farms related growth expenses. So I think that we have a couple of things to look at, and I don't know that we've done that yet. I have more thoughts on that, but I mean, that's kind of where I am today. I would rather wait until like at least the end of June, where we've had the directive from the commissioner and Dr. Kavanaugh and her team have had a chance to absorb those initiatives and sort of look at our budget and indicate any areas in which we were off.
So I'll speak a little bit to that. The difficulty with that, again, is moving forward with the 1/12, the monthly budgets, if you will, because the monthly budgets are built on the FY21 budget. And those need to be approved by DOR so that July 1, the schools have a budget. So by waiting, technically, you would do 1/12 of the FY20 budget, which would not include any of the new hires. So that would hamstring the hiring that the administration has done for FY21. So those new hires would be in jeopardy if we are unable to submit the 1/12, the monthly budgets that include, you know, not only the contractual raises, but also the hires. So that would be one issue with waiting. The other piece is the CARES money does have allowance for distance learning. So if there are changes in the distance learning, that is specifically identified with the CARES Act money. So while we are budgeting, and I know you use the term for traditional education, any type of a shift that we may have to do would then be covered by the CARES Act if we have to have additional resources. And again, as I spoke earlier, in terms of monitoring, whether it's nursing, whether it's additional cleaning, those again are specifically identified by the CARES Act. So it would not be a drain on the 21 budget. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I just worry about that 1.6 million. I feel like that, you know, the town has to run an election. We have to have a town meeting. I mean, that money, we'll have to put other provision. That money is going to be shared. I mean, presumably the schools will get a significant portion if needed, but like if we have to add 10 buses, you know, that could be $700,000 or, you know, I don't know what ballpark. Like it just kind of adding up the potential exposure. I feel like we could easily get well beyond the stabilization, the CARES Act money. So I was understanding that the 1/12 budget could be voted. Like, I don't think, I don't know, I think I speak for all of us. I don't think any of us take issue with the budget that was presented. I mean, I think the places where we need to hire, we really need to hire. We need those Elmwood teachers. We need we need the Hopkins teachers. Those are absolute needs. I don't think any of us would disagree with this 6.6% increase, which is very generous in the time. My only fear on voting this is the final budget is that we don't then allow for any additional needs to open the schools. And I think if we could give the intentional support of the 6.6 level of staffing, I think we all are supportive of that, and then come back and vote officially once we have clearer direction on how to open the doors. I mean, we can't just willy-nilly take HCA money and buy PPE. Like, we are bound by how we are allowed to spend this money, obviously, because we've had to justify, in the case of the high school expansion, the engineering funds and so forth, we've had to justify that those monies are directly related to growth, due in large part to legacy farms. So I just want to make sure that we're in a position to actually, we can't just use this money unless things change that I don't know about. We can't just use our one-time funds, even if we want to, even knowing that it's not good budgeting, because it's that kind of a time right now. We can't just tap it for just about anything, so I think I'm just concerned. And if there's any way to delay, I would feel much more comfortable after we get the commissioner's advice.
So I'll speak to a couple of points on that. In terms of transportation, we would not be able to add buses because there aren't buses to add. So, so that the transportation becomes a limiting factor. So if we're bringing kids in, we're limited by the number of buses that we have. So that's where you would look at potentially, maybe it's a shortened day, maybe you're shifting start times and things like that. But the limiting factor are the number of buses. There aren't any companies out there that have buses or transportation avenues to spare. So I've already initiated that conversation with Connolly in terms of if we did this, and if we did that. So we've already been in conversations about what we could do, to stay within the confines of the contract and, and still be able to get students to school. So transportation is a limiting factor in terms of what we do with school. So there aren't additional buses to add. So in terms of exposure, that's not really one that is in the terms of exposure. And in terms of the HCA money, the growth has happened. So the students are here. So the teachers that we're hiring is addressing the growth really throughout the system. So we have been limited in adding teachers through a couple years. We haven't really added a tremendous number of teachers. Most of our adds have been around paraprofessional, special education, or adding general education paraprofessionals because class sizes are too high. So the HCA money will be utilized towards growth. And no, we wouldn't use it towards PPE. Again, that's what the CARES money is for. So
I have one thought in terms of timing. I don't think the select board meets again after our next meeting, which is our next meeting is June 18th. I think the select board meets on the 16th when we're also actually meeting with them as well. But I don't think the select board is scheduled to meet again in June. And in terms of deadline, and you can't see I'm looking at you, Susan, because it looks like a Hollywood Squares episode here. But in terms of deadline, they need to get that submitted before the end of the month. I would assume because it covers July.
Right. And the select board needs an approved budget from the school committee. As any any of the budgets that the select board is putting forward, it's because the school committee has approved it. And again, if it's the only approved budget right now is the FY20 budget. So in order to submit to the DOR, they would need to know that it's a budget that the school committee has approved and has moved forward so that they can take that step. And again, it really is, those new hires, because we need to move in that direction. And then in addition, we did base, all the expenditures, even for July and August, on the FY21, using the FY20 patterns, but, what is in the FY21 budget, including staff, obviously.
Can I just add something? I hear you, Amanda, that uncertainty is absolutely in the air. But at the same time, what is going to be the case in 8 weeks? We have no idea. And so even if we delay a vote for 2 weeks, we still don't have any certainty really about what September is actually going to bring. And from what I've heard from the town side and the select board is that they're willing to keep listening to us and to be flexible and to help us along as we need it. And I think Susan Rothermick and Dr. Kavanaugh have put in place a very thoughtful plan going forward, even though it was one that they had to put together rather quickly. So I hear you about the uncertainty, but I think that's where we're going to be for the next year, she said quietly. And I feel like we have to hire those teachers. We need those teachers.
I agree 100% that we have to hire the teachers. I just don't believe that we actually have to take a vote tonight. I don't think that it is required that we take a vote. I think it sounds like from the direction that we've gotten from the town, we have to endorse the level of spending of the 6.6% increase, but we don't have to officially vote, I don't believe. I could be wrong. I don't know if there's any more clarification. I didn't think an actual vote was actually required.
You do need to vote this budget. You don't need to vote the 1/12, the monthlies, but that's what the monthly budgets are based on is your FY21. So for the Board of Selectmen to submit the budget, the monthly budgets based on 21, it has to be an approved budget. Technically, the way 1/12 budgets work, technically, it should be based on FY20.
Right.
So using FY21 numbers, we're kind of skirting a little bit here.
Yeah, and I guess, whether we need to vote it right at this moment or not, I think I would kind of concur with what Meg just said. Even I think if we wait out the 2 weeks, I'm not sure that we are going to have a clearer picture. And I don't know that Hopkinton is in any different position than any other city or town in the state right now. So I think that, we're all kind of moving ahead with 1/12 budgets, and we're kind of hoping that the picture keeps getting clearer and clearer. But at the end of the day, I think that, in some ways, Hopkinton is actually in a better place than a lot of other districts financially right now. We're getting the opportunity to add 6.6% to a budget. But I think that we are because, we do have 500 new students that, have come to us over the last few years. And the money is there. And so I think if, the money is there, so too is the uncertainty. And I'm not sure if, either of those two things is going to change greatly in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I get all of this. I just I didn't hear in any of the budget that was done I think when we were still a little bit hopeful about the fall, quite honestly. I mean, from one, even now that, camps are opening, but, it's a 10-person cohort. Like, if classes have to look like a 10-person cohort, how do we do that? Like, when the budget was done, I just didn't see any allowance, no slush, no extra 20%, no whatever, nothing like that you would normally put in, anticipating that there will be increase. Now, I know that our slush is coming from the CARES Act money, and I know that the municipal side has been very attentive to the fact that we are going to have needs, and I'm very thankful for that. I just don't think it's that much money. Like, I don't know, I worry about that when you spread it across all of the needs in the town. And yes, every town is going to have to face these same concerns. So very likely additional money will be manufactured wherever this money comes from. I don't know. They just keep adding zeros to these things, and they just send these bills out, and there's money. I don't know. But, I mean, you all have to make it work. I'm just saying that for me personally, if it were me, then I would build into the budget something. I think that we know enough based on how businesses are opening, based on how what colleges are saying. We're not a city, but Middlesex County has had more cases than Suffolk County. So, I know that there are all sorts of things to factor in, but there are some indicators of things that would demand additional investment for the fall, and I just would feel more comfortable if I saw any of that. Even to the point where I know we're cutting FTEs in the custodial staff, and I understand that we may have different building use. We may do morning and afternoon sessions. We may spread people across all the buildings. We may not do every day. We don't know what we're going to do, but we are cutting 3 headcount needed to do a base level of cleaning. So we know we're going to need probably contract custodial services. We've talked about that. To a large degree. I just don't see any of it in our budget. So I think it's unusual. If I were doing a house budget, knowing that there were some uncertainties, I would plan. I'd put a little something in there, just to know that we don't know, but we're pretty sure there's going to be investment. So that's where my hesitation is. If you feel that the 1.6 million is going to cover it, and we have enough in our revolving accounts that we've been able to preserve, and we may or may not in the second half of the year tap the free cash, maybe that's good enough. But it's not that I don't understand that there's uncertainty, but when you have uncertainty, you take what you know and you make projections and you make some allowances. So that's just where I sit. I mean, if you're comfortable with this budget, and I mean, I certainly know we need to hire these teachers. We know for a fact, I mean, thank goodness we have the extra classrooms to spread the students out in. I mean, if we didn't have, I can't even imagine Hopkins without these extra classrooms. So, I mean, thank goodness we have this. We know we need these teachers. So that's where I am. So I don't know, Jen or Nancy or Meg, if you're okay with it, then maybe I'm just one off here.
So I definitely hear your concerns, and the uncertainty that we're sitting on right now, I think, is going to continue to be uncertain, like Meg said, for the foreseeable future. My concern with not voting the budget tonight is that it has been explicitly stated that they're looking for a voted upon budget in the way they figure out the 1/12 budget that's being submitted. And if they don't have this, and they look to our FY20, we won't be able to hire, even if down the road we're able to increase our budget, which is doubtful based on the projections of revenue. But my concern is if we don't have this for the summer months, we don't have the assurances to go out and be able to hire in a timely manner and have those teachers in front of kids, whether it's remotely, in person, or whatever the hybrid might be. It feels like either way we're holding some risk, whether we voted or whether we don't. I guess my discomfort is I feel like the risk is greater if we don't vote it.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit because I I don't like the fact that we've had to get boxed into this corner and said, tonight, I think we learned that this needed to be done fairly recently, that we needed to submit a newly approved budget fairly recently. And, swimming around in my head too was the question of, the last time we voted a budget, it was brought back to us several weeks later and we had to vote a new budget. And now flash forward 3 more months and now it's been brought to us again. And now we are being asked to vote another budget. I wonder if that has ever happened, ever, in municipal finance in modern history. So I feel like because things are in such flux, I don't like being boxed into it, but I think that, if this is something that we have to do to ensure that things progress over the summer, this is something that we have to do. But I feel like, it just keeps getting brought back. It could very well be, in my mind, be brought back again if things change significantly, if we experience a second wave of illness, if the commissioner or the governor either are in agreement or disagreement about the way that things are supposed to move forward. So I think that there are just too many variables to pause and say, let's wait and see what happens, because we're not going to know. And there's lots of things that are happening around the scene or behind the scenes that, we get pieces of information here and there. We don't get it all at once. And we're never going to get a perfect picture, I don't think. So, I don't like or appreciate being asked for the third time to revote my budget, but I appreciate that the circumstances are pretty dire and pretty, unusual, to say the least. And so I feel like if my way in is that we have to do it, I think we have to do it tonight, just because we can't leave the district hanging without the teachers that they need and without the backing of the FY21 budget numbers. If we did it based on the FY21 budget numbers, I think we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. So I don't like it, but I'm willing to do it because I feel like that's what we got to do. I'm muting myself now.
Other comments or questions? Is there a motion then?
I move to approve the new, what does it say?
A new budget.
To accept the revised, third time, fiscal year 21 budget.
Second.
So a motion by Jen and a second by Meg, and we'll do a roll call vote, starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Amanda?
Only to hire teachers. Only to hire teachers. I will vote yes.
Fair enough. I also am a yes. Sorry, I was trying to figure out if I was muted or not. So that passes, and we will look forward to the new teachers, because that is important, and to being able to move on with our next school year. So that brings us, I'm sorry, I got to flip back down into our next item of new business, which is the HEF grant at Marathon Elementary School. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you want to?
I sure will. I'd love to talk about them, but I see Christine Fredericks is here as well. And so, certainly a thank you to HEF. This year's 2020 grants are just under $28,000. And so it's really amazing the way you are able to support our schools. We are ever so grateful for all that you are doing. And, as I go through them tonight, we're going to be able to see that these are nicely spread across the district. So Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything a little bit.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, fabulous. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. We are so excited to again grant to the schools, to all the schools. We have 6 grants this year that cover the range of the schools for innovation grants. And we're just so excited about these grants. Fortunately, the grant cycle hit right as the COVID situation was hitting. So some of the grants we need to take a look at whether they need a deferment for a year. Some of them may not be practical to execute in this upcoming school year. In those cases, we'll roll it forward and keep it on books for one more year. Hopefully things get back to a new normal. But some of them we think are easily executable even in the new world. So again, very, very excited. I want to just do a shout out to all of the school liaisons who worked so closely with the schools and applicants. So we have Vijay Vingori and Crystal Fitzgerald and Adi Netcounty on the lower levels, and we have Michelle Moody and Jennifer Andrews and Jennifer Schmid at the higher levels, and to all of the HEF board who so diligently read through all of these applications, and to everybody who applied. So thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Great, thank you so much. And please, extend our thanks to all of those folks as well. So we can just go through them kind of quickly, and we will accept them knowing that they may be deferred for a little bit just because of COVID, but nonetheless, they are things that I know our principals and our teachers are really excited about. So our first one is Active Math, and it's a foundational math program, and it fosters physical activity. It was submitted to HEF by Sandy Maynard, who does math instruction at Marathon, as well as Principal Lauren DeBow, and that grant is in the amount of $1,364.74. And I am requesting that the school committee accept this HEF grant for Active Math on behalf of Mrs. DeBow and Mrs. Maynard.
So moved.
I would like to second that, and thank you, Chris, so much for being such a positive topic that we can sort of flip to on the back side of what we were just talking about. This is great, and there's like 3 of them. It's fantastic. Thank you. So second, enthusiastically.
Agree, and also thank you for coming. But so we have a motion by Meg, a second by Jen. We'll do a roll call vote starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg.
Yes.
Amanda.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I am also a yes. So thank you very much on that. And then the next one is the Hopkins Elementary Grant.
Okay, this one is a $13,000 grant. It's entitled Recess Reboot, Improving Social Emotional Learning at Hopkins Through Play Opportunities. It was submitted to HEF by Mrs. Babson, the assistant principal, and Mrs. Bolello, the principal at Hopkins. And the goal here is to improve recess for all students, and it will further nurture a positive climate for all of our learners. So this one's really very generous.
So I move to accept this grant for Hopkins.
I'll second.
Great. So awesome. Motion by Meg, a second by Jen, and we'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg.
Aye.
Amanda.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Thank you very much on that generous.
Hey, can I ask a question on that? Is it a recess robot or a recess reboot?
Reboot. Does it
But
say
we
robot?
kept saying the same thing. We kept referring to it as the recess robot because that would just be too fun.
No, I was wondering, does it say robot on
I
the?
think it does. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, reboot.
Technically a reboot.
Okay.
All right, so our next one is Have I Got a Deal for You? And this one was submitted by Pat Allen at the middle school. And the grant will provide for media literacy students to have access to technology to create really high quality video content. So advertising, newscast, blogs, and all of those kinds of things. And it will really make our kids creators of information.
I move to accept it.
I'll second.
Great. Motion by Meg and a second by Jen. We'll start with a roll call with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg
Aye.
and Amanda.
Aye.
I am also a yes. So thank you very much for that. Also very generous gift. Grant, sorry. The next one is the high school grant. Is that right?
I think we might have two middle schools. Two middle schools. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Jumped ahead.
Okay, so this one is the Master Grid Technique Professional Development for Better Teaching and Learning. It was submitted from the middle school by Laura Kirschenbaum, Mary Frances Kirschenbaum, and Lauren Bailey Jones. And the grant funds will provide for professional development for the Master Grid Technique, which is a student-centered, competency-based system that allows for differentiated learning opportunities in a self-paced Paced Classroom. The grant amount is $6,500, and I'm looking for your approval.
Whoops, I move to accept it.
I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you. A motion by Meg, a second by Jen, and we'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Yes.
I am also a yes, and that one also passes.
All right, and then we move on to the high school in the amount of $1,000. The title of this grant application was Reading Sets You Free. It was submitted by one of our newer English teachers, newer to Hopkins, Mr. Ben Lally. And this is a grant that's going to expand the sophomore English curriculum so that students are able to select their own text during a reading unit from different accessible reading choices. And so I'm looking forward to accepting this grant. And Mr. Lally says that it will reignite high school students' love for reading.
I move to accept it.
I second that motion.
Great, so that is a motion by Meg and a second by Jen, and we'll go ahead and do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
and I am also a yes, so thank you for that.
All right, and then the very last one is district-wide. It was submitted by Karen Rayno, who is our K-12 PE Wellness Director, and teacher, Kristen Santos, in the amount of $3,200. And this grant allows every student who attends the Hopkins Public Schools to receive a comprehensive, sequential, safe, and effective yoga education beginning in kindergarten and continuing through high school. So I'm just looking again for you to accept that grant in the amount of $3,200.
I move to accept it.
I definitely second that.
What a fabulous, I love all of these. So we'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Yes, I'm kind of wishing that I could fit into this yoga curriculum myself. Well, is school committee part of this? I could use this.
We'll crash a high school course. They'll never know we're there.
we look just like high school students.
Blend right in.
Blend right in.
All right, so I am also a yes, so this one also is passed. So thank you so much for all of that and for all of your work to raise the funds that allow these grants to be possible. It much appreciated.
Thank you so very much. And I will sign off now. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
All right, we have, I'll let Nancy introduce that.
Sorry, I was muted and then unmuted. That brings us to the next point on the agenda, which is the Accept Board of Directors. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. The next two items on the agenda are really about our collaboratives that the district belongs to. The first is Accept, and what Accept and Tech need are people on their board of directors or people to be a voting member for the next upcoming school year. And so I am looking for you to appoint me to serve on the board of directors for the Accept Collaborative for the 2021 school year.
I move to have you be on the Accept Board of Directors.
I second that, provided that you are interested in being that representative.
I very much am, yes.
Has anyone asked you if you're willing to do this, or are you just we're assuming? All right, as long as you're willing, I'll second it.
She's bionic.
Yeah.
She-
Let's add it to the list.
Great, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call then, starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
and I am also a yes. So that so carries. Congratulations on the reappointment.
Thank you.
Well, condolences, you know.
No argument there.
We actually do learn a lot by our involvement in our collaboratives.
That brings us down to the tech voting member.
Yes, so that's Tech in Walpole. And again, I would be a voting member for the Education Collaborative for 2021. So I am looking for you to appoint me to that role.
I
You
move
want
to,
that role too?
Hmm?
You're
Yeah.
sure you want that one too?
Surely.
All right.
okay, I move to appoint you to that as well.
Great, so motion by Meg and second
Second.
by Jen, and we'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda.
Yep.
Great, so that congratulations on 2 appointments there. Much appreciated. I know you bring a lot back from that.
Thank you.
That brings us into old business, item A, which is the final approval for Nature's Classroom, December 2020.
Okay, so I think Mr. Keller is here to talk about Nature's Classroom and the New York City trip.
I am. Thank you for having me.
Fabulous. Welcome.
So I was here in January seeking that initial approval. So I'm now here seeking final approval. Obviously, the conditions are a little bit different, but nonetheless, we are hopeful that we'll be able to do both of these field trips. I think it's important to at least plan for them and have everything in place. So the first is our Nature's Classroom field trip, which is our annual field trip to Charlton, Massachusetts, where our students get to experience the outdoor. There's a lot of science, math, outdoor efforts involved in that. Our students always come back very positive and optimistic about their experiences, both in terms of connecting with fellow students, their teachers, and the folks at Nature's Classroom. So our plan to do that is actually Tuesday, December 1st through Friday, December 4th. This is much later than we typically do it, and we did this because of what we're hearing in terms of the potential of EEE resurfacing. So last year, as you may recall, we wound up moving our Nature's Classroom trip to November after its spot in October. And so we're just trying to be proactive and it's hard to get on Nature's Classroom calendar. So we attempted to get a little bit later this year when hopefully the threat of mosquitoes has passed. So that's why we are changing to that date. And the cost per family, or per student rather, is $360. And I should mention that as an approximate cost because we don't know busing, the cost for busing may change, but that is based on what we anticipate busing being and what Nature's Classroom has quoted with us.
Amanda?
How are you? I just have a question about how it works in case we cancel, because I know that the setup is very communal. So are families paying now, or will they be paying sort of after the fall kind of unfolds a little bit? How does it work?
Yeah, so we pay, so we ask families to pay by mid-October,
Okay.
and we actually don't pay Nature's Classroom until we conclude the trip. So that money doesn't go to Nature's Classroom until afterwards. So we essentially hold on to that money. And every year we have some families where the trip is cut short or the family winds up not going at the last minute. So we always send those checks back or cut a new check to those families. But we are actually still in the process of paying for last year's Nature's Classroom trip as we speak. So it's not done until we conclude.
Okay, I was just thinking about all those poor kids who were trying to go to Europe in April vacation and
Yeah.
all that. Obviously not fun. So I didn't want to see you in that same position. But
Yeah, and depending on where things are, I mean, so we had our incoming 6th grade orientation Tuesday night of this week, and so we have the date as October, but depending on where we're at, we may even push that date back for families to send in that money, just if things are still where they are right now.
my only other question was for your creature comfort. Do they heat those buildings?
They do. So yeah,
good.
it's the reason why we moved to Charlton, I think 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, from Colebrook, Connecticut. Colebrook is a lovely site. It's on a YMCA. It's at a YMCA, but the accommodations are a lot more rustic. There's not a ton of heat, and it's pretty campy. Charlton is a lot more dorm-like, and so it's a better setting, and I think that we found it to be overall a better experience for us.
The heat for sure in December will be an important factor.
Yes, no question.
So any other questions or comments before we look for a motion on that? Is there a motion then to approve the Nature's Classroom for December of 2020?
Yes, indeed.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so that is a motion by Meg and a second by Jen, and we'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
I am also a yes, and so that passes. Thank you so much for that. And we have you on here again, Mr. Keller, for the next item, which is the final approval for the New York City trip for June of 2021.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, we had to cancel our New York City trip for our current 8th grade class. But hoping that things will be different next year, we are coming back with our New York City trip for next year's 8th grade, and we're looking to do that Wednesday, June 9th of 2021 through Friday, June 11th of 2021. We are going to be using Jump Street Educational Tours. Once again, we've had a really positive experience with them. In addition, I do want to say that when we canceled our trip with them, they did, from my perspective, they did a pretty nice job with refunds. They're still getting those out, but families only lost $100. Easy for me to say only, but comparatively speaking, to what I heard in other districts that was that were struggling with getting money back from tour operators. I think that was pretty reasonable. That was the $100 deposit. So we've been pleased with everything that they've done for us, and I think we have another nice trip here planned. So the total cost of this trip, again, it's estimated. Transportation costs may change, but it's estimated at $799 per student.
Questions, comments?
No.
Okay, in that case, I would seek a motion to approve the grade 8 New York City trip for June of 2021.
I move to approve the trip.
Second?
Second. I was going to try and give Amanda a chance, but
We're in a pattern. We have a nice pattern to rhythm.
fair enough.
So a motion by Meg and a second by Jen. We'll go through and do a roll call, starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
And I am also a yes, and so that passes. Thank you so much, Mr. Keller. It is nice to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much. I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Alan.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
So that brings us down to item D on our agenda, which is the 2021 school calendar revision. Feels like we've seen this a few times. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Yes, this is the calendar that keeps on coming back. Okay, so we can do school revision calendar first, and then we'll go to school committee. But the school calendar revision, as you know, we had a school calendar, and then we took a second vote some time ago to include September 14th, which was going to be the newly instated holiday for the running of the Boston Marathon in the fall as opposed to in the spring. We've learned from the BAA that there will not be a running on the September 14th date after all, and so we're just looking to restore that date to the school calendar, eliminating it as a holiday.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm just looking now. It's the back and forth between the screens that I have skipped over an item out of order. But so any questions, comments, concerns about going back to the original calendar? Okay. Then I would seek a motion to approve the school calendar revision as presented.
I move to approve it.
Motion by Meg, and is there a second?
There is. I'll second.
Second by Jen. We'll do a roll call, starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
And I am also a yes, so that is passed, and we're hoping to not have to see that again.
Yes.
Don't be so sure.
Not sure on that, but that brings us back to item C, which is the school committee meeting calendar for FY21.
Sure. So we had looked at this last week when we were together, and we've made a couple of revisions based on our perceived needs for the summer. So one of the things that we've done is we have 2 meetings in July and 2 meetings in August, and they are now on the 9th and the 23rd of July and the 6th and 20th of August. And we also went back in and we looked at that big split that we had between February and March. Originally, these calendars reflected February 4th and March 4th as meeting dates. And so what we've done is we've added the 25th of February, which is the 4th week of that month, and it follows February vacation. So those are the changes.
And the July and August meetings will be in the evening, won't they?
Yes, they can be whatever time I think is best for the committee. And if we're still, sort of working remotely, I think
Evening's better.
it gives us more flexibility.
Yeah. No Bob Dylan concerts this summer, guys.
No.
We can play it in the background.
Dr. Kavanaugh, are you okay with adding the extra meeting time? I mean, you have so many meetings. I mean, I feel badly, we talked that we think we need the meetings, but, we didn't really ask you.
No, I do think we should keep them there because one of the things I keep saying to the building principals is that typically July is our, sort of super downtime, and we all just get to, decompress for a little bit. But given all of the unknowns about what the opening of school is going to look like, and, we've been talking about creating multiple schedules. What if you have no ability to keep study halls in your schedule, or what if you can't have kids more than 3.5-hour days? So they are very busy now, and I think that they will be very busy in July. So those meetings are fine.
Amanda, you said that like this meeting with us would not be a fun experience for all involved. So
That's a highlight of anybody's summer vacation,
Yep. So do we want to go ahead and just have a motion to approve that calendar for our meetings for FY21?
Yep. I move to approve the calendar.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Great. So motion by Meg and a second by Jen. We'll do a roll call starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Look forward to all of our fun. Oh, wait a minute. So Jen, you will not be here for those.
Well, maybe in the attendee section.
Right, we will look for you. So that's great. Thank you. So that brings us down to the Student Opportunity Act, which is item E, Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right, in just a moment, I will share my screen with you. And I guess in some ways, I just want to apologize about the Student Opportunity Act. I mean, as you know, the due date on this was March 31st, and then we learned that we weren't really going to be getting the Student Opportunity Act money. We might be getting it, should be submitted, should be not. The most recent date that we have heard is June 15th, and I am just in a place now where I think we've seen it several times. We have presented it to the community, and so I'm going to sort of use this opportunity as a last presentation and hoping that you'll approve it, and I will simply submit this to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, regardless of whether it's needed or not. It's just a matter of uploading it right now. So I think we're at a place that's fairly perfunctory. So I'll share my screen. All right, so just very quickly, the Student Opportunity Act came about so that we would be getting more money in Chapter 70 money, and really it was an opportunity to give school districts just a little bit of money to close some gaps, and depending upon which district you were, you might have gotten more or less depending on need. What the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education did was they broke the Student Opportunity Act into 4 different categories that you could target. The 2 that Hopkins has chosen are enhanced core instruction and targeted student supports. Very particularly, the second one under enhanced core instruction, research-based early literacy programs in pre-K and the early elementary grades is one of ours. And under targeted student support, inclusion and co-teaching for students with disabilities and English learners. And so just to break that down, how did we make those decisions? The research-based early literacy programs in early elementary grades, we looked at the 3 groups of kids who fill that high needs category, and that's the label that the department uses to bundle low income and English learners and special education. So low income, when we looked at the 2013-14 numbers in Hopkinton, only 2.4% of Hopkinton's 3,461 students were identified as low income. But the most recent numbers, we have 5.4% of the population is identified as low income, and there are 3,862 kiddos. And so very often, some of our kids who struggle with reading are also in the low income category. We also have English learners
In 2013, only 1.2% of Hopkinton's kids were identified as English learners, and today 6.2% of our students are what we would call ELs, or English learners, with 13.4% of those kiddos having a first language other than English. And finally, in special education, the percentages have stayed just about the same, but we have always had that mission to close the gap between our general ed students and our special education students. So for those reasons, we have a very strong research-based early literacy focus right now. We are focused on reading and vocabulary growth in particular. So that is one aspect of our Student Opportunity Act, closing the gap measure. And the second one is inclusion and co-teaching for students with disabilities and English learners. We had done an audit of Elmwood last spring and then an audit of Marathon this year. And one of the things that we have discovered we would like to get better at is especially designed instruction for students K-3. So we have a consultant that we'll be working with, and we'll be looking at, our co-teaching models and how to deliver better specially designed instruction. And the second piece of that is our ESOL instruction. We will be, hiring a person who will be not only our L director, but someone who will help us with equity and access for all students. And so hopefully that person will be able to conduct some professional learning for the people in the ESOL department, but also to use data to kind of help us to ensure equity and access. So those are our plans for Student Opportunity. And at this point, I would like a vote from you so that I'm able to submit this to DESE. And the new tentative due date for this is June 15th. Whether it is real or it is not real, I can't tell you, but I certainly would like to be able to submit our plan to the department, as many schools already have.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions or comments before we look for a motion?
I just want to thank you. I'm sorry, Amanda. Do you want to? I just want to thank you so much for this, and especially for hiring the consultant to come to elementary and Marathon, where I know we already have excellent learning specialists. We have excellent teachers there, but an outside view can only help.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda, did you want to add? You're muted.
I just wanted to also say thank you, and I am excited because I think the second one, if I'm not mistaken, will probably make use of some new space for ELs in Elmwood that we didn't have before. So, I think you, like you always do, I think you have a very data-driven look at this, and I appreciate that. But then I'm excited that we've also had the forethought to work so hard to get that space with the new classrooms, because we had such a heap of learning going on all on top of each other in one space. And so this is exciting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do we have a motion then?
Oh, yes, we do.
I was looking at you, Meg, even though you can't tell which square I'm looking at.
Oh, I knew whose turn it was. I move to approve the submission of the Student Opportunity Act forms.
Second for that, is there?
Sure, I absolutely second that one.
So a motion by Meg and a second by Jen. We'll do a roll call vote starting with you, Jen.
Yes.
Meg.
Aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I am also a yes. Thank you so much for all of your work on that. And I know it's been kind of a moving target, but it is nice to know that that can go off now, hopefully on the 15th. So that brings us into item F, which is the superintendent evaluation. I did share out with everybody the documents. I apologize, it was last night that I did share those out so that they are not obviously in the packet that was posted by public, but we did go through this. Now it feels like a very long time ago, a couple of weeks ago. Before we can, I think publicly we should go through the final, where we landed on the ratings, but I want to make sure, did anybody see any errors that I made that feels like it does not reflect our conversation?
I think you did a great job compiling it. It's hard to create one voice out of four. So thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Okay, so then I will just go for the public record, just through, not to be monotonous, but it is intended to be a public process. So just through the evaluation, the report. So, the first step was to assess progress toward goals. The professional practice goals, we rated as met. The student learning goals, we rated as exceeded. The district improvement goals, we also rated as exceeded. Step 2 was to assess performance on standards. The standard 1 is instructional leadership. We rated that as exemplary. Standard 2 is management and operations. We rated that as proficient. And standard 3 is family and community engagement, which we rated as exemplary. I didn't back this up to explain that the expectation of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed is that, and Amanda, you did a much better job explaining it when we went through the initial, is that the ratings would be proficient unless there was something that really pulled them one way or the other, so that the areas in which we have rated Dr. Kavanaugh as exemplary were areas in which we felt there were really clear evidence that things were above and beyond what our expectation would have been. And then the final standard is professional culture, and that is also proficient. The overall summative performance based on step 1 and step 2 ratings was exemplary. And then there are a number of comments that I will not read aloud because this is actually, it is a part of the public record anyway, but I don't think that it requires that we read the entire thing aloud because we would be here a very long time. The next piece, now let me go down, sorry, it's a very lengthy document. The superintendent's performance goals. The student learning goal, the focus indicator we looked at was 1B, and goal 4 was to launch initiatives that build innovative learning opportunities for students, and we rated that as exceeded. The professional practice goal, we used indicators 3C and 4B. This was from goal 2 from Dr. Kavanaugh's goals, was understanding that staff growth in areas of diversity, sensitivity, equity, and inclusivity cannot be fostered by professional development alone. Continue grassroots methods to build the repertoires of administrators, faculty, and staff with the hopes of ensuring greater social and psychological safety for all students. And boy, does that feel relevant right now. But that we rated as met. It's obviously ongoing work that has been going on in the district and will continue, I know, as we move forward. The professional practice goal was goal 3. And we used indicators 3C and 3D. And the goal was grow communication between families and the superintendent and grow relationships with elected officials. We rated that as exemplary. The next goal is a district improvement goal, and this was goal 1. We used the indicators are 2E, 3D, and 4E. And the goal is, in response to enrollment growth, conduct an analysis of school facilities and develop a capital budget reflective of perceived facilities needs. And while obviously our capital budget was thrown off by everything that's happened this year with the pandemic, we did rate that as exemplary. There was a lot of work that went into that and will continue to be used going forward. So that brings us down to the superintendent's performance rating for standard 1, which is instructional leadership. So the first one is 1A, curriculum ensures that all instructional staff design effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons and measurable outcomes. That we rated as exemplary. 1B is instruction ensures that practices in all settings reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work, engages all students, and are personalized to accommodate diverse learning styles, needs, interests, and levels of readiness. We also rated that as exemplary. 1E was the next one that we used, which is data-informed decision-making, uses multiple sources of evidence related to student learning, including state, district, and social assessment results and growth data to inform school and district goals to improve organizational performance, educator effectiveness, and student learning, also rated exemplary. The overall rating for standard 1 instructional leadership The education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of schooling. Also rated exemplary. So in that moves us down into the superintendent. If anyone wants to jump in at any point, please go ahead and do so.
I just want to say, I have to say that, to the audience at home, this might seem like, oh, they just put everything down as exemplary. I mean, Dr. Kavanaugh does exemplary work, and we gave this a lot of thought. We did not lightly assign exemplary when we did. And if you look at the ratings, they really push you to proficient. The P is huge and the E is little, and the other ratings are little. And, when we picked exemplary, we did it with a lot of thought. And if anyone references the comments, they can see that. But
and we can touch on those a little bit afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. It just seems so,
I wrote going
these
through
are hard-earned E's here. This is so.
Well, and the data that we were using was really very specific and really highlighted some really outstanding qualities that we have been fortunate to bring us through some pretty difficult times. So thank you, Amanda. The superintendent's performance rating for standard 2 is management and operations. 2A is environment, develops and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, emotional, and safety needs, social needs. That is also rated exemplary. We then went down to 2E, which is fiscal systems, develops a budget that supports the district's vision, mission, and goals, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district and school level goals and available resources. We rated that as proficient. And the overall rating for standard 2 management and operations is the educator leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling, and the overall rating was proficient on that. Then the next part is the superintendent's performance rating for standard 3, family and community engagement, and 3B was sharing responsibility, which continuously collaborates with family and community stakeholders to support student learning and development at home, school, and in the community. That was rated as exemplary. 3C, communication, engages in regular two-way culturally proficient communication with families and community stakeholders about student learning and performance, also rated exemplary. 3D, family concerns, addresses family and community concerns in an equitable, effective, and efficient manner. We rated that as proficient. And the overall rating for standard 3, family and community engagement, is exemplary. So that brings us down to the superintendent's performance rating for standard 4, which is the professional culture. And we started with focus indicator 4B, which is cultural proficiency. Ensures that policies and practices enable staff members and students to interact effectively in a culturally diverse environment in which students' backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges are respected. We rated that as proficient. Indicator 4C is communication, demonstrates strong interpersonal written and verbal communication skills. We rated that as exemplary. 4E, shared vision, successfully and continuously engages all stakeholders in the creation of a shared educational vision in which every student is prepared to succeed in post-secondary education and become a responsible citizen and global contributor. We rated that as proficient. And the overall rating for standard 4 professional culture was proficient. So, and do people want to just share any highlight comments? I know we did go through this extensively before, but I think it helps in the event there are people that are watching now and curious a little bit about what went into the evaluation that didn't have the advantage of the comments we had at our last meeting.
I'm happy to start. I'm sure everyone has things to say. But, each of us here has been working with Dr. Kavanaugh for 2 years. And I think she leaves most of us feeling quite gobsmacked by the amount of effort she puts into her work, but not only the effort, the kind of excellence of her achievement is astonishing to me, especially in times of high stress, like we've had with COVID and with an explosion in Hopkins student population. She has been so thorough and attentive to every detail in planning students' education. I feel like she really makes every student feel seen, heard, protected, and respected. And I don't think a superintendent can do better than that. I'm also so full of admiration for her quiet eloquence. A lot of people, myself included, are show people. You know, we make a lot of noise, we throw our hands in the air, but she doesn't do that. And she continues to do such stellar work. If any of the public is curious, they should look at her student learning plan, which she whipped up on April 4th, one Saturday while the rest of us were lying on our sofa, stuffing chocolate cake in our mouths, bemoaning our COVID-19 existence. She came up with a whole learning plan for the entire district, which, and I've been teaching for 30 years. It's extraordinary. It's creative, it's exciting. I'm so excited when I read her curricular suggestions. And I even witnessed a little video she made for the Hopkins School, a morning meeting, where she teaches about the variation in syntax and the choices we can make when we speak to make our speech and our writing more engaging. And it was brilliant. It was lucid, it was brilliant. I just don't think we can do better. And I just feel so honored to have served these 2 years alongside her. And I know I've made myself difficult at times, but that's just what you have to do. But I feel like I should make myself less and less difficult because you're just wowing me in every way. So thank you.
Thanks, Meg. Anybody else want to add on to that? So, Jenna, you're nodding your head. Is that because you wanted to say something?
I do, because I definitely want to, everything Meg said, yes. And I think, some of the conversations, especially because I work in the public schools, we are so drawn towards the notion of proficiency. And, I think when the new evaluation process was first introduced, I can remember being told that you're all proficient unless you're not. And that's pretty much it. And I could, it kind of struck me as this, what do you mean I'm proficient? There are folks, some of us, and most notably Dr. Kavanaugh, who are striving for much more than just being told we are proficient at our job. And so during our conversations, there were about the evaluation this year, there were points where I even caught myself saying, I felt drawn to, as Amanda said, the P is bold and it's big and it's gray highlighted because that's the column that you're supposed to choose according to the DESE. And we continue to discuss all of the evidence that Dr. Kavanaugh presented to us. And we were basically like, this is not proficiency. In almost every example, it was something that just really goes above and beyond, with always in her heart and her mind the kids. And so we we really had all of us kind of went, well, yeah, I thought it was exceeds 2, but I wasn't sure how to handle the proficient, bold, gray highlighted column there. And so really there were just so many things that that we see, but also that you provided Dr. Kavanaugh's evidence that I think really highlights your commitment to the students, your commitment to the district. And I think, Hopkinton is so fortunate, even in times where we aren't in crisis, which, have been very few and far between in the last 6 months, we are really, really, really just blessed to have you leading the district. And, everyone else who works with you, I think, it's just such a great group of people. So Jen and Susan are here, and just, there's such a great group of people that work together. And I think that's also due in no small part to leadership. You have a good leader, everyone is going to step up and do a really good job. And so I think, thank you. And it wasn't hard to come up with these E's once we started to really discuss the sort of heart of all of the evidence that you provided and of our own experiences working with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jen. I do have to thank the entire leadership team and really all of the teachers and the paraprofessionals and the custodial staff and the cafeteria workers and, librarians and all the admin assistants, because this organization only works the way that it does because of all those people who work really hard all day, every day. So, while this is lovely and I'm grateful, I would never be in this position without them. So their support is invaluable to me. So thank you.
Amanda, you look like you were going to say something as well.
Well, of course, I will chime in. And it's true what you just said, Dr. Kavanaugh. It's true that you don't stand alone, but it is not necessarily true that people would follow you and emulate your professional style. I mean, I think that is exactly due to you and who you are. And so, don't downplay it. So I am not eloquent like Meg, so I just wrote a couple comments. So I'm just going to read what I wrote because every time I go freelance, it's bad. So anyway, I was looking back on the year and thinking back to the fall when EEE was in skyrocketing enrollment were our biggest threats. Dr. Kavanaugh responded to the need for data-driven planning by working with outside consultants. This really hadn't been done to this degree before, and people were clamoring for some information about this enrollment growth. And you could see Dr. Kavanaugh working with the consultants, the community leaders, and everybody else to develop a facilities capacity assessment and a model for 10-year projections of enrollment. And it seems like a million years ago that's the only thing we talked about. But looking at her do that work, I think you could easily see some highlights of her strengths. Her strength as an educator in pinpointing the real high priority pinch points and devising like immediate term workarounds and long-term solutions. And she did a lot of creative staffing and work to make us even get through this year with our enrollment and to get our budgets put together. Her strength as an administrator, always balancing the urgent needs of the district with the budget limitations and the capacity for the community to support us fiscally. And her strength as a communicator. I mean, the tireless filming of the HCAM videos and the blog writing and attending growth committee meetings and meeting with municipal partners. I mean, this is like, it takes a huge amount of effort that is above and beyond what is, minimally required of the job. And that's what makes you so successful. I think all that work put in to build those relationships and use all that, all those connections to come up with our growth plan and to do all the other jobs that you do. And then as the year continued, I had the opportunity to work again with you on the policy subcommittee and with Ms. Devlin as well. And we spent countless hours evaluating policies, most notably around transportation was a big one, but also before I rejoined, the gender identity policy, which a lot of us highlighted. I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that speaks to you. You brought that to us, and you brought us a policy to advocate for all students. And then you brought those students to our meeting, and then you incorporated their thoughts in the rewrite of that policy draft. And it was just an honor to be part of that and working with you on the transportation policy. I know the outcome might not have pleased everyone in the community fully, but I can completely vouch for the depth and complexity of the issues that we evaluated, the time, the hours that we spent. And not only did you work on the policy, but you expanded that and allowed us as school committee members to look at the whole picture, the procedures, the forms, the things that really are outside of our purview, but that you allowed us to look at holistically to do the best job that you could. And that's the kind of thing that you do. You always go sort of above that one next step, whether it's policy or the growth committee. And then, of course, this is all July to June, but so much has happened since March. And, as the world has responded to COVID-19 pandemic, Hopkinton really in our public schools have become an example of effective and clear leadership. We hear other districts turning to us, asking us how we do what we do. We see other towns looking at us. And I think that is a huge credit to you and the work that you've done. From the initial emergency meeting to close the schools in March to the current handling of remote learning, you have put the health and wellness of students, families, and staff at the forefront of your decision making. You consistently and clearly kept the community apprised of developments. You quickly assembled your team to devise a remote learning plan, and you did most of that yourself on a weekend, which was great. And you implemented it through successful negotiations with the HTA very quickly. And you always maintained a balance of both healthy practice, keeping students and staff healthy and attending to their wellness, and also focusing on student achievement. So it's unbelievable to me when I watch you work how many factors you have to balance in every decision that you make. Not all of them are visible to us or to the community, but all of your decisions are well considered. And that has come through a lot with the COVID-19 response. And, finally, just, regardless of what's going on in your own life and the personal sacrifices that you have had to make to be present for our community throughout everything that's been going on, you just continue to be there, and you've established yourself as a reliable guide through these turbulent times. I think I mentioned in our other discussion that I look at your character and your instinct, which are things that you can't sort of learn, like budget management you can learn, curriculum development I think you can learn. Character and instinct really come to the forefront at times like this, and we are grateful for your character and your instinct in navigating all of this for us. So looking ahead, as we face difficult decisions on the pandemic, learning models, district-wide campus plans will come back at some point, and other broad community challenges, I cannot imagine anyone better suited or better able to lead our district than Dr. Kavanaugh. And I'm grateful for her leadership, empathy, and knowledge at a time when we so desperately need it. Congratulations on outstanding work this year and this difficult year.
So
The danger in speaking last is that everybody has said all things that I would agree with and have not, I don't want to just echo what everybody else has said, because I think this was a much more meaningful process that we went through to come to this evaluation. And the year, when you look back, as Amanda says, the July to June is pretty outstanding stuff to look at. But what you brought us through in the midst of this pandemic is nothing short of miraculous. To have to come up with things on a dime to work with the HTA and to work with looking out for the welfare of all of our students to the best in these times that I think anybody would be capable of. I think you work harder than probably anybody I know in any part of my life. I know there are many times when I have gotten up in the morning and drinking my coffee, looking through my emails. I see multiple emails from you that were written at like 3 a.m. after I know you were out at a meeting until, 10 or 11 p.m. And then I see something, and you're up and doing stuff at 7 a.m. So I wonder, as I'm just struggling to wake up, how you got all that done in the time I was sleeping. But that your work ethic is parallel to nobody else I know. And it has shown not just in the accolades and the rankings that we have as a district, which, that is definitely reflective of hard work that's gone on in the district, in the excellence that we have, but it's never enough for you. You never stop and just say, things are good enough. You keep looking to see, where do we need to improve it? Where are the students that, their needs aren't being met exactly, and try to look when we can't figure out how to better meet them, bringing in consultants that have provided a lot of really valuable information. So I want to echo everybody's sentiments. And Amanda, I think you said it well. Congratulations on an outstanding year in spite of a lot of really difficult challenges that have been thrown at us, budgetary and educationally and otherwise. It feels like looking at the visioning for the campus master plan was years and years ago, but I also look forward to getting back to that, because I know a lot of work went into that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So as a matter of administrative business, we do need to vote to accept the evaluation as it is, unless there are any edits that people wish to make further than what has already been put forward.
Is it time for me to make a motion?
It is time.
I move to accept the combined superintendent evaluation as it stands.
A second?
slow on the unmute. I'll second.
That's great. And then we'll do a roll call vote starting with you, Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Yes.
Amanda,
Aye.
and I am also a yes. Thank you very much for all of that. So that then moves us down. It is not in the agenda, but it was intended to have been in the agenda, a second opportunity for public comment. I did receive one public comment by text, and that is from Dawn Ronan. She said, I want to thank Mr. Bishop, administrators, and the many parents that made the parade happen. The community support and teacher turnout across all buildings left students and families of 2020 smiling ear to ear. Thank you for the tireless budget work with all the challenges of unknowns. I really appreciate the effort made to encourage community engagement. So that is all I have, unless anybody else is aware of any public comments. So do we have then any future agenda items that people want to bring out now? Okay, then that, seeing none, that brings us to items by consensus.
Okay, I didn't know if I was muted or not. So as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the item by consensus as listed below on your agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second.
second by Jen. We'll do roll call starting with you, Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I am also a yes, in the items by consensus pass. And at this time, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Meg and a second by Jen. We will go by roll call, starting with you, Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda, and I am also a yes. And we are,
Let Amanda answer.
That's an aye. That's okay.
sorry, I saw you nod your head. Sorry about that. I'm in my head moving along. So that leaves us adjourned now that we have all voted at 8:56 p.m. I want to thank you all. In our next meetings, we have June 16th, we have a joint meeting with the select board, and then we will go into our regular meeting on June 18th. Thank you all. Have a good night. And next week we are off for the first week in several. So
Wow. I'll miss you.
I will miss you all too. Have a good night.
Fast though, Nance. You never.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.